The day that changed my life forever occurred in first grade, 6 years old. The teacher gathered us together and said, from now on, you'll be divided into 3 groups. The Bluebirds, the Parrots, and the Crows. Now, of course, these groups had nothing to do with birds. They were dividing us academically. The Bluebirds were the smart kids. The Parrots were the not as smart kids. And the Crows were the not smart at all kids. And the interesting thing is, these funny bird names didn't fool anyone. The parents, the teachers, the kids all understood what they were about. Well, some of the crows didn't get it, but everybody else did. I was a bluebird. That didn't mean so much to me at the time, but my parents were very proud. My mom called all the relatives and said, John's a bluebird. Yes, I was a bluebird, and life was good. And that lasted for about 5 years. Till 6th grade. 11 years old. You start to go through big changes then. Every day you look down at your body and you go, ah! And as the hormones started to kick in and take control, I realized that girls were going to have a much more important role in my life than I had previously suspected. I had my eye on Teresa. She was one of my fellow bluebirds. I'd known her since kindergarten, and I just started to notice how nice her eyes were. I also noticed she was staying late after school, so I thought I'd stay late too, see if I could run into her and tell her how much I liked her eyes. So that afternoon, after all the rest of the kids left, I went back in the classroom. And at first I thought it was empty, but then I heard giggling coming from the coat closet. So I went over there and opened the door, and there was Teresa kissing some other boy. I was in shock. The boy's name was Philip, but everyone called him Flip. Flip! That's a pretty cool name. How could I compete with that? My name's John. Of course, the worst thing about it was, you may have guessed this, Flip was a crow. That's right, my Teresa, my fellow bluebird, in the coat closet with a crow. How could that be? Well, that was my introduction to one of the undisputable facts of life. Girls don't like bluebirds. Oh, sure, they'll look for a bluebird when they need help with their homework. But when it comes to getting in the coat closet, they go for a crow every time. Crows are cool. Bluebirds are nerds. I've been a good bluebird my whole life, and where did it get me? Well, I'll tell you where it didn't get me, inside that coat closet. So, to my 11-year-old mind, this seemed like an easy problem to solve. I'd become a crow. I never even thought to become a parrot. They're just boring. So I put my plan in place immediately. In English class, they asked me to use the word derange in a sentence. I said, home, home on the range. In history, they asked me to write an essay about the men who signed the Declaration of Independence. I said, they're all dead. And at least a dozen times a day, I'd answer a question by using the official crow response. I don't know. It only took a week's worth of these answers before it happened. My teacher, Mrs. Eastman, stopped me in the hall and said, John, I'd like to see you after school. I said, yes! My days as a bluebird are over. I'll be in that coat closet by the end of the week. So as soon as school was over, I marched up to Mrs. Eastman's desk to await my destiny. She says, John, is there something wrong? I said, yes, Mrs. Eastman, I'm glad you asked me that question. I've been living a lie. I'm no bluebird, I'm a crow. That's right, I'm a crow. I've been faking it all these years, terrified that someone would find out my dirty little secret. So it's such a relief to finally come out of the closet. Yes, I'm a crow, so sign me up. You take care of the paperwork, I'll take care of everything else. And by the way, from now on, call me Ringo. Well, I was about to learn another indisputable fact of life. Once a bluebird, always a bluebird. Not only did Mrs. Eastman not make me a crow, she called in my parents, and the guidance counselor, and the school psychologist. My life began to be filled with phrases like, failure to meet expectations, not applying himself, and the real killer, no son of mine will ever be a crow. Thus began that dark period in my life. The girls didn't like me because they thought I was a bluebird. My parents didn't like me because I thought I was a crow. The crows didn't like me because I was never in the coat closet. I was drifting aimlessly through life, a crow trapped in a bluebird's brain. But as I grew older and wiser, as bluebirds are apt to do, I began to realize you don't have to wear the same hat all the time. When you're at a job interview or trying to impress your boss, be a bluebird. When you're at the bar having a beer with the boys, be a crow. If you play your hats right, you can be a bluebird by day and a crow by night. A few years ago, I went back to my hometown for my high school reunion. First person I saw there was Flip. He gained a lot of weight and he lost a lot of hair. Still looked every inch a crow, but there he was in the middle of the room, surrounded by women. Some things never change. I turned to see who else I could find. There she was, Teresa, looking as beautiful as ever. She said, Ringo, where have you been? What have you been doing? I told her I was working at IBM, and I could start to see those beautiful eyes gloss over, and she turned to where Flip was. I realized I had to take drastic action. I said, yeah, and I keep those IBM restrooms really clean. I'm a contest master.